In today's character profile, I want to talk about a comic strip that has delighted us for almost 40 years. His strip may not be philosophical like Peanuts, or have the social commentary of Doonesbury, or the workplace humor of Dilbert. And art-wise, it tends to be repetitive, reusing a lot of the same expressions, especially over the last 20 years. But despite all that, Garfield has managed to retain his charm. It's a comic strip that has succeeded at still being funny after many years, mainly because of how lovable the characters have become. Most of us, whether we want to admit it or not, probably have one of the books lying around. To get a sense of how far Garfield has gone in popular culture, let's look at his beginnings. The concept of Garfield came out of Jim Davis realizing how many comic strips were centered on dogs and could not find any cats. I guess he never subscribed to any of the thousands of newspapers that carried Heathcliff comic strips. Having grown up in a farm with cats, he understood firsthand the humor that can be gained from felines, and Garfield was born. In the first strip, he looks vastly different from the Garfield we know and love. But as is typical of comic strips and artists, Davis's style evolved, and Garfield became more anthropomorphic with bigger eyes, and even started walking on his hind legs. Despite the evolution of his look, his personality has remained largely unchanged, as he was always a Monday-hating, lasagna-loving cat with frequent contempt for John, the cute cat Normal, and a stupid dog named Odie. Garfield being uninterested in chasing mice also leads to a humorous running gag, along with his hatred for spiders and complete lack of sympathy towards them. Much humor is also gained out of John being out of his element and kind of a dweeb. Yet somehow it's a credit to Davis and his team that Garfield somehow never becomes too mean-spirited. He's just sort of sarcastic and would rather sleep in than actually do anything productive. The other animals and people in his life get in the way of those plans, and he immediately lets them know how annoying he thinks they are. Although Garfield has been shown to have a bit of a love life with Arlene, who a lot of the time is the voice of reason for him. Others, including myself, do make fun of Garfield for having a specific routine. However, Jim Davis has on occasion departed from that. Most famously was in October 1989, when Garfield found himself completely alone and abandoned and scared of what's going on. It's a genuinely sad storyline about loneliness that is surprisingly impactful with a good message at its center. Garfield was also allowed to venture beyond the comic strips in the animated specials and the series Garfield and Friends. Rather than merely translating these simple 3-panel comic strips to animation, these specials and series took advantage of the animation format. They developed Garfield and his world further with funny and entertaining scripts and wild scenarios. The material was further elevated by the voice acting from Lorenzo music as Garfield.
Why don't you chase mice like other cats?
Show me a good mouser, and I'll show you a cat with bad breath.
These episodes also tended to be more fantastical as they delved deeper into Garfield's vast imagination. Garfield and Friends is definitely an example of an 80s cartoon that has held up really well thanks to the talented artist Phil Roman and the smart writing of Mark Evanier. It's no surprise Evanier was later hired to write some of the scripts for the recent Garfield show. Despite the move to computer animation, this new show keeps the humor of the comics and earlier cartoons intact, and Frank Welker does a fantastic job of voicing the titular feline. A more divisive reaction has greeted the live-action CG films from the mid-2000s. Me, I think they're relatively harmless diversions. Yes, the stories are the typical ones we often find in these sorts of live-action comic strip film adaptations. It's odd that Garfield is fully CGI while the other animals are real, and he's definitely a lot more athletic in these films than he was in other incarnations. However, Bill Murray was perfect casting as Garfield, fitting the sarcastic, devil-may-care attitude that is such an integral part of the character. It's because of Murray that a good amount of jokes do land in these films. As cliched as Garfield the movie and Garfield 2, A Tale of Two Kitties are, there is a simplistic charm about them. I'm not as enthusiastic about them as Roger Ebert famously was. No, seriously, read his reviews. But I definitely don't think these are the cesspool of family film schlock other people do. Recently, it was announced that Alcon Entertainment, which currently has a first-look deal with Warner Brothers, has acquired the rights to make a fully animated Garfield movie, and this has a lot of potential. Frank Welker will be my top pick to voice Garfield were these new films to come to fruition. However, knowing the way Hollywood works, they probably want more of a name actor, and I think the fitting choice would be Parks Recreation actor Nick Offerman. Not only does he have the appropriate voice and attitude for the role, he even looks like Garfield. Anything else I need to mention about Garfield? Oh, apparently people are now debating over what gender he is, to the point of Wikipedia having to shut his article down. Oh, Internet, what pop culture icon will you create meaningless discussions about next? However, it says something about Garfield's place in society that we still continue to read his comic strips to see what adventures he will go into next, even ones where he has been erased from the panels. See you next time.